Before we get to today's program, just to give you a heads up on a program in March, on March 23rd, we just announced this today. We're going to have a dinner with Anand Pannerachun, former Prime Minister. That's going to be at the Intercon across the road. He's going to be talking about reforms, which is much bandied about word in Thailand, but which are really actually poorly understood in Thailand. So he's going to give a very big picture. He's been Prime Minister and seen as an elder statesman. So Anand is always very, very interesting to listen to. He has a very long-range vision and a tremendous clarity of thought. So that dinner would be something you can probably look forward to on March 23rd. Now, but coming to this evening's program on aging, it's very interesting to watch this unfold. Japan, of course, is often cited as the major example of an aging society. More than 22% of Japanese are already 65 or older. And apparently, Japan's fertility rate is 1.39, which is, I've been told, is the lowest in the world. However, switching quickly to Bangkok, it's quite amazing that Bangkok's fertility rate is 0.5%. Anyway, so by 2060, according to one projection, the number of Japanese will have fallen from around 127 million today to 87 million. And almost half of them, almost 40% of them, will be older than 65. So this is a very serious problem, and Thailand is also poised on the cusp of this tremendous demographic change. By 2040, 17 million people in Thailand, a quarter of the population, will be above 65. Thailand's national fertility rate is 1.5%. The rate in the capital is 0.8%, sorry, not 0.5, 0.8. Interestingly, households headed by the elderly here are twice as likely to be poor as those headed by people in their 30s and 40s. But I leave the details and the big trends to the speakers. We're very fortunate to have a really top-notch panel here. We have Dr. Kirida Paupichit, who who's with the TDRI, research director at the TDRI, and has been a country economist for Thailand at the World Bank and has tremendous experience all over mainland Southeast Asia, has studied Laos and Cambodia as well. And we have Eduardo Clian, who has flown down from Chiang Mai for this, regional director for HelpAge International. Eduardo has worked for Oxfam. His CV is really all over the world. I can't even summarize it clearly, but he spent the last 12 years or so living and working in Asia, and he knows Laos, Vietnam, and the region intimately. And a late addition, I'm glad he could make it, Dr. Paramiti Vimonsri is the Secretary General of the National Economic and Social Development Board, NESDB, and he also is he did a PhD in economics in Ottawa. His specialization was public finance and monetary theories. That's quite interesting. He also has multiple responsibilities. He's a board member of about, I see, 6 corporations here, including the EGAT, TCDC. So, and also a board member of the National Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. So we have a tremendous panel here, and I'm glad we have a good turnout tonight. May I invite the speakers to come up here and take your places? Thank you. We'll start with Dr. Kirida once we've located her file. So here we are. Okay. Dr. Kirida, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I used to be here as in the audience, and from time to time, when I was with the World Bank, we used to come and present our Thailand Economic Monitoring, and I see some familiar faces here, so very good to be back here. I've prepared just a few slides because Nirmal has given me executive orders to not go beyond 10 minutes in the first round of presentation. So I'm actually going to try to make this full screen. I think this is the button to push. Yay. Okay. So most of the material that I would like to sort of present or give you a background today is from a World Bank report that was just out called Live and Prosper, and that has nothing to do with Star Trek, though the World Bank had to go and get copyright from the Star Trek producers to use the name, and as long as it has nothing to do with spaceships, the Star Trek producer says you can use this name for the title of your report, and it's actually Live and Prosper, Aging in East Asia. So, with that, there are lots of information on East Asia and the aging situation in there, which I would like to quickly take you through so you have an idea of what it is. And of course, the report also then, gives a lot of recommendations, drawing mainly from countries that have already been through, the aging experience and policies that actually, work in those countries. And perhaps we could apply that to Thailand. But first, let me just give you sort of like a background of what the situation is at the moment. And it's actually quite clear that we're in a region that's aging the fastest in the world. And so by 2040, there'll be 500 million, elderlies in East Asia alone. And I think elderlies here means 65 years and over. So that's a definition of of elderly in the standard literature today. And very interestingly, this phenomenon of aging in East Asia has just happened over the past 15 to 20 years, because, for example, the bottom line is France. France took 115 years to move from a population of over 65 years old of 7% of the total population to 14%, right? But, for example, Thailand took only 20 years, so we age very quickly. So, the number of, elderlies in Thailand moved from 7% of the population to 14% just in a span of 20 years, and in Vietnam in a span of only 15 years. So we have aged very rapidly over the past, 15 to 20 years. But unfortunately, we have not become rich as quickly. So we've aged quickly, but we are still pretty much in either the low income or the middle income group. So as you can see, the one I circled there, oops, the circle is a bit below, but it's Thailand. So Thailand, as you can see, is in per capita income that's pretty low, but our dependency ratio, meaning elderlies who have to depend on working age population, has increased pretty quickly. So we're not like Singapore, right, where they have aged, but they have become rich, much faster. So fact is, we're going to be old before we get rich. Oh, that's not a very good situation to be in. And that will have implications and, of course, adaptations and preparations, which Eduardo and Dr. Parometi will also discuss. One of the big implications is that when you have more and more elderlies, the labor force falls. And the labor force is defined as those 15 to 64 years of age, right? So in many countries in East Asia, as these countries age, their labor force falls. For example, in Thailand, between 2010 to 2040, if we look forward, our labor force will fall by more than 10%, right? So that's in Korea, it will fall by even more than 15%. So this group of people who are from 15 to 64 years of age will decline. But there are other countries that will have sort of the positive dividends, Timor-Leste, Laos PDR, or even the Philippines, Cambodia. So there are countries that will still have a growing working age population, but unfortunately Thailand is not one of them. So when you look at a bit closer in Thailand, right? So we actually can see that, as the working age population, which is the blue line above, starts falling, and it has already started falling since 2015. The number of children has already fallen even before that. And the number of old, the share of population of elderlies, have started rising. So actually by, this is a very long projection till 2100, we will probably have a ratio of, one, sort of like 1.5 working person will have to take care of one elderly person, which is a very low ratio actually. Well, at the moment, if I remember, Dr. Parmiti can correct me. I think it's about 3 or 4 at the moment. You can correct me later, but it will, it'll fall to 1.5, which is pretty severe. So one of the other things that is really sad is that not only that, we're aging quickly and we're still poor, at least at the moment, households that are led by elderlies experience higher poverty than those who are led by non-elderlies. So this is again a phenomenon that we really have to be serious about, because if we're going to enter an aging society, we don't want this picture to remain so in the next 30 to 40 years, where most of the households in Thailand will then become poor because they'll be led, many more of them will be led by older people. So that's another phenomenon that has happened in Thailand. And when we ask what kind of resources do old people in Thailand rely on, it's very interesting that when you look at Thailand compared to many other countries, elderly people in Thailand rely mostly on their own financial support. While in some countries, like in China, for example, the lower panel shows the urban population, while the upper panel shows a rural population. So for example, the urban population in China, the elderly in China, receives public transfer as their main source of financial support. But in many other countries in East Asia, including Thailand, it's your own income. So, elderly must save, basically. Can't rely much on, well, at least at the moment, they can't rely much on transfers from, either from their families or from the government. So there are many policy options that will try to counter these impacts on the economy and also on the elderlies, and there are quite a bit of them. So, these are some of them which we can all discuss later. I don't want to take a lot of time in this first round. And there's some very interesting data that I will show as well, probably in the second round, on what are some of these, policy options for Thailand and what's the situation in Thailand right now. Maybe I'll just give you a little sneak preview. For example, one of the policies that could be used to lower the dependency ratio, which means it's good for both the elderly and for the children as well, right? They don't, have to rely on the children. The children would not have to spend a lot on supporting their parents. Well, one of them is to increase, I don't know what happened, but one of them is to increase the labor participation of women. When you hear that, and most of the people say, hey, but Thailand's women participation is quite high, right? We're not Japan, we're not the Middle East. What's the problem with that? Actually, I have a chart that I will show you, and it will quite surprise you, but because the projector is now down, I think, Nirmal, I'll keep that for my second round so that the audience will still, be, mystified by that, and I will turn that to Eduardo then.
Okay. Well, that was very much within 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I think we'll have to get you to talk some more later. Eduardo, over to you.
Oh, it's back.
That was
back?
too short. So I have time to ask a question. I think you are wrong. You said that Japan has the lowest total fertility rate. And I think there is another state which has even lower total fertility rate than Japan. Do you know which one?
State?
The Vatican. Anyway, your short presentation gave me time for this little joke.
Okay, your slides are back, but we'll get back to it later. Eduardo, carry on. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make 4 short points. One is that in Asia we have all scenarios of aging. We have the aged societies, with Japan, the hyper-aged, over 30% of the population now over the age of 60. We have the middle-income countries, which are very rapidly aging: China, Vietnam, Thailand. Sorry, among the aged countries is, of course, Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong. All those are very rapidly aging countries or environments. The middle-income countries that are aging in this period of 20, 30 years are rapidly catching up with the aged societies. And then we have a few countries which have a lower pace of aging, namely Philippines, Laos, Cambodia in East Asia, or India, still a lower pace of aging. But the question is that in those 3 scenarios, there are different options, different policy options that are being adopted, that have been adopted, that can serve as platform for learning for countries becoming aged. The second point that I want to make is that this demographic change is changing radically the shape of our societies. So this is the most rapid demographic change that has happened in the history of humankind, probably. By the beginning of the 20th century, when child survival became the norm, pyramids of population became very, very, very clear with a large base. Then all states, all countries, all societies adapted to those changes in the demographic profiles. So the health systems, the educational systems, mother and child vaccination in the later 20th century, the protection policies and all that were developed in order to deal with a population that had those characteristics. But the situation in the 21st century is now radically different. Those pyramids are becoming parallelograms. And now the large proportion, 35% of the population, even 40% of the population by 2050 in some countries, will be over the age of 60. Now, this is a huge challenge for social and economic planners. The challenges are presented in macroeconomy, in households, in individual behaviors, in educational systems, but in particular in three areas that I want to highlight now. One is the health systems. The health systems were created, were developed, were strengthened with the infectious diseases in mind. So that means that you have an illness, you go to the doctor, you get a cure, you're treated, and then you're healthy again. With the aging populations, the non-communicable diseases, the chronic diseases, the arthritis, the hypertension, the diabetes, all those are becoming the norm. And those are not diseases that are cured right away. Those are diseases that can be, in many cases, prevented or delayed in the onset and can be managed. But the challenge for the health systems is quite different. So if you have health systems that are geared for the 20th century, they are cracking by all the seams in the 21st century. They need readaptation. The other is work in old age. How can we deal with a situation that there is a rapidly decreasing population in working age, but we need to maintain a certain level of workforce in the population? Either you increase the productivity enormously, but for which you need to develop the education systems for life, or you rethink issues like retirement. How can you have in Vietnam, for example, a person retiring at 55, 58 years old and living 20, 25 years in idleness, no? So that's a resource that is being wasted socially in the moment that is in a time when it's badly needed, no? So work in old age, both the formal, the informal work, has to be rethought, no? Not necessarily like in the European countries, extending the retirement age from 65 to 66 to 67. There have to be ways of rethinking the work in old age, flexible work, coaching younger generations, the different types of work, the work in informal ages. For example, in many countries in the region, older farmers can have access to credit and extension support until they are 60, but a large proportion of them work until they are 70, so they are cut off from those sources of credit at the time when they need the most. So that's one adaptation. The other is pensions. If the formal pension systems cover 20-25% of the population reaching retirement age. Now, the pension systems were designed at a time when you were born, you worked for 30, 40 years, and then you retired for maybe 7, 8 years. But now you retire and you live 20 years. So the pension systems are also cracking by the seams, and they have to be rethought. In Vietnam, a study of the ILO says very clearly that by the year 2030, the pensions funds will be totally depleted. and that covers only 23% of the population of Vietnam. So what is going to happen? Is the state going to support those pensions? That will be a huge investment for a small proportion of the population, for 1/4 of the population. So those are the dilemmas that require rapid, strong rethinking of those societies. And then, so it's the health systems. Care in the 20th century, you grew old and your family took care of you, a large proportion. No? Nowadays, that is not the case. Nowadays, there are families with one child. It is not possible to have the family support as in the extent that it was in the 20th century. So the long-term care systems is another challenge, another area in which the social and economic planners have to rethink these societies. And that is happening in many countries. In China, they have established the policy of 97-3, 90% age at home, 7% at community level, and only 3% go to retirement houses, because you cannot have retirement or centers for 300 million people. So there has to be a social and economic adaptation for provision of long-term care, at home care, at community care. And the very last point is we cannot solve the situations of the 21st century with the tools of the 20th century. In the 20th century, anybody over 60 was commonly thought as vulnerable, as people that could not contribute to their societies. Nowadays, we see people who are 60, 70, even past the 70s, who are a resource to their societies. They have skills, they have abilities, they have willingness, they have health, and they have the possibility of continuing to contribute to their societies. And that is one of the key elements of this redesign of societies that has to take place in all countries. I think I'm over time now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Eduardo. Dr. Parameti, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think in the case of Thailand, I think my office, the National Economic Social Development Board, have introduced the issue of aging society in Thailand. I think almost 10 years ago in our 10 National Economic and Social Development Plan. I think at that time, Thailand started the aging population process. So the elderly group, I think the people aging over 60 at that time start to be around 7% of the population. Now, I think in the 11 development plan, the aging group now account for 16% of the population. And for the next plan, we are about to prepare the 12th National Economic Stimulus Plan for the next 5 years for the year 2017 to 2021. By the end of the next plan, I think by the UN definition, we will be completely aged society, because the elderly group will account for 20% of the population. So not only that we have started the aging process, but as Kun Krida mentioned, compared to other Western country, we are aging very fast. So we will, although there are similarity to those countries who have experienced the aging situation before, in Thailand we will see the very fast change, and during this time that we are not high income country or not rich yet. So this is quite a big issue. I think still for the 12 plan and other plan in the future, I think the aging population issue will start to be more important issue for the development and public policy. For the next plan, the 12th plan, it will be the first time that our labor force will start to shrink by 0.4%, and then the plan after that, the labor force will shrink by 0.8%. So for Thailand, the sad news is that last year, not this year, it is the year that we have the largest number of the Thai labor force. From now on, I think we will have less and less Thai labor. In the past, we are the labor surplus country, but now I became Secretary General. We are labor deficit country, so we have to deal with this constraint, which are much different than before. With less labor force, I think by itself, I think the potential economic growth will be reduced. I think by 0.2 or 0.3% for the next, I think 2 5-year plan, if we cannot find a way to increase the productivity and find the way to find a new source of the competitiveness for the economy. So the implication for the economic growth and competitiveness is a big issue. Thailand have to learn to find a way to sustain growth and competitiveness, which is much different than before, that we have surplus and cheap labor for whoever want to come and invest and use those labor in Thailand. So from now on, that's not the situation anymore. In terms of the social, I think this is a big issue in terms of the retirement saving. In Thailand, we have limited the retirement saving scheme. I think mostly for the civil servants and the state enterprise employee and some part of the corporate sector. So the retirement saving scheme only cover, I think, a small segment of the active labor. I think probably around 10 million people. So there are around more than 20 million people who do not have retirement scheme, I think, at this stage. Our surveys also show that even right now, in the elderly group, 65% of the elderly group do not have enough retirement saving. And for people over 80 years old, 75% do not have any saving at all. So how to prepare, I think, more and more people who will become aging population in the future to have enough saving to take care of themselves. And Kun Kirida have already said that, I think, in the future there won't be many active labor force or young generation to take care of them. So this is a big issue, how to have a saving scheme and then prepare people to have enough saving in the future. we have start to implement some scheme which will expand to wider population. But I think we start a little bit late compared to the speed of the aging which we will face. So the retirement savings scheme will be a big issue, I think, from now on to the next, 10 to 15 years. We also want the elderly, I think, because of they are still active, as the Ivadu mentioned, and I think there will be more of them in the future to be able to work and still contribute to the society. Right now, the elderly people, I think, who still work in the formal sector, only less than 10%. I think of the people over 60%. I think 90% of them still have some bit of work, I think, in the informal system. But I think from this statistic, I think there's still more potential, I think, for elderly people to become active and still contribute to the economy. In terms of the fiscal implication, I think this is also important. I think the burden for the governments and the public sector to take care of the aging, I think, society in terms of the health care and the saving support, and also the allowance for monthly for the elderly will also increase very fast. I think right now, I think we have spent less than 10%. I think almost 10% of the budget for the welfare of the elderly, but it will soon, I think, double very fast. So the key issue and key policy which we are trying to implement now, try to address, I think, these many aspects of the aging society. I think for the saving scheme, we have been able to establish the national saving scheme. So anyone, I think, even without an employer, can apply to this scheme, and then the government will, I think, contribute matching fund for the saving scheme. But it just start, I think, this year. We start since around the September, and right now about 300,000 people enter. We hope it increased to 1.5 million people this year, and then 3 million next year. But like I mentioned before, we have like 20 million people who do not have enough saving. So this is still a big issue. For the public sector, there start to be discussion about extending the retirement age from 60 to 65. But in terms of the detail and the introduction of the scheme, is still seem to be many details to have to work out. But that is in the picture also. Lastly, I also want to add that we are talking about aging group, but in terms of the policy, if we want to have the active aging group who can take care of themselves and contribute to the economy and be strong in good health, we have to start from the very young people, and also take care of them, how to take care of themselves throughout the life cycle. So actually, if we talk about the aging the society, that in terms of the policy is the lifelong policy which have to start to take care of the child since the birth, especially for the poor and disadvantaged family, and then how to have them safe during the working life, and then become active, and then elderly with enough saving. So it's cover a wide variety of the policy which we have to prepare the Thailand for. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Paramiti. I'd like to actually, Dr. Kirita, I'd like to go back to you because you were actually interrupted by the failure of the screen. Maybe you should finish off and then we'll open the floor to questions.
Sure. Actually, Dr. Paramiti has given a pretty comprehensive, list of what Thailand's trying to do to actually prepare, especially those who are already old or are going to enter old age through pensions, through health care. I would just like to again highlight this picture, which Dr. Paramit has also mentioned, that we've already passed sort of like the peak of our working age population, which was 36 million people in Thailand. So from now on, it's going to be less and less. And our population actually, I didn't bring a picture that shows Thailand's population will also start declining, because with the 1.5% fertility rate, it's not even enough to replace, those who will, leave this world, as one says. So we will experience, a pretty rapid decline in our labor force, from now on. So what, are some of the measures that we can sort of learn from other countries that have implemented some of the measures that could help sort of probably not reverse the trend, but sort of slow down or mitigate the impact of this decline in labor force. And also keep the economy growing, right? So one of the things that many countries have done is try to raise the fertility rate, and interestingly, the results show that a one-time transfer for women to have babies don't really work because they don't really respond to that. But a more sustained sort of transfer, throughout a child's sort of younger years, that helps more. And providing sort of facilities for child care services, that actually helps to increase fertility in women, especially in the Western countries, and this has been shown. So those are some of the things other countries have done. Of course, increasing female labor participation, as you can see, it links to the first one as well, right? I mean, if women have to leave work to take care of their babies, because they can't afford a nanny or there are no facilities, then of course, it links. So increasing female labor force participation, there are many ways that one can do that, but it actually helps. And I was, alluding to this point for Thailand because, I always also thought that Thailand has a pretty high, women labor participation in the labor force. So what's the big issue here, right? And I always thought that, women would work, until they're old. So that relates actually to number 3, which is extending the work lives of, of workers as well. So you don't only want to include women, you want to extend, their work lives either through increased retirement age or through some incentives that will keep them, in the labor force. But when I looked at this graph, which is also from that World Bank report, it's quite surprising that actually urban Thai women leave the labor force, pretty early on, and that's the bottommost line. As you can see, as urban women reach the age of 50, their participation rate in the labor force, the employment rate falls very quickly. So they sort of retire themselves from the labor force, either to take care of their families or take care of other things, but they don't actually, work anymore, which was quite surprising. So there are lots of women in the labor force, but they sort of leave quite early on. On the contrary, the topmost line are rural men. Rural men in Thailand, my goodness, they work for a long, long time. As you can see, the slope only starts declining when they're 60, when they're 60, and they still keep working until they're, 75. Their employment rate is still quite high there. So, incentivizing women to actually stay on and work longer, right? That will also help, and sort of including them back into the labor force, that will definitely help with the declining labor force situation as well. But other than that, of course, if we can't really rely on our own people, then number 5 may work, which is encouraging immigration, which many countries have done, especially for Singapore. Right, they have encouraged, especially skilled workers, those who are smart and intelligent, right? Singapore will welcome them. Well, Thailand, we welcome more of the unskilled labor. So maybe, we'll have to rethink of that policy and, give more, opportunities to those with high skills to work in a country. And actually, evidence from other countries that have implemented these policies show that if the immigration is temporary, the impact is quite small because then, people leave, they don't stay. But if the immigration gives sort of sense of certainty and permanence, actually it helps to increase the labor force in those countries. So that is, one of the things that may work because at the end of the day, there's so many Thais, who will be left, to work in Thailand. And of course, Dr. Parameti and Eduardo mentioned about given, the stock of people that you have, you will have to probably increase their productivity through education. That's a given, and you have to start fast because someone who's 30 now, in 35 years they'll be an elderly, so you have to start right now, before the situation gets really worse. But the one important thing I just wanted to end here is, when you think of a coping with an aging society or economy, I think you have to think holistically of what needs to be done. Like Dr. Parameti said, it's not only thinking of how to take care of the elderly, right? Or, how to increase labor force. But at the end of the day, your economic structure might need to change, right? At the end of the day, I will just show you one last graph, which might be interesting to you. At the moment, most people in Thailand are engaged in agriculture, right? The share of employment, agriculture, yes. Around 33% of Thais' labor force are still in agriculture, right? And about 16.8% are in manufacturing, and the rest are in services. If we were to actually, move, into an aging economy, you can't have so many people in agriculture, because, it's physically demanding, right? Or in, manufacturing, which is very labor intensive, or, you need to be, very, agile with your hands, or need to have good eyes. That would not be possible. So at some point, I think Thailand would need to restructure its economy to move away from agriculture or even manufacturing to more, high-skilled manufacturing, which you use more machines, or, to the service sector, which, at the end of the day, even if you're old, right, you can still have a laptop and you can work on it, or, you're in the hospitality and industry, you can still provide very high-quality hospitality services, so it's something that is not so labor intensive, but rather knowledge intensive. I think that's the way that we would probably need to go. And if we were going to go that way, then we have to think holistically about what will be our infrastructure investment plans going forward, right? If we're not going to be so much into agriculture and industry, so the infrastructure may need to move to more digital, right? Digital economy. So that's one of the things, or policies around social and government services. We might need less schools now, for example, because as you can see, the number of children have been falling for the last 30 years. So there are all these things that you have to actually think holistically in order to prepare, to enter an aging society. But of course, it's very important. I agree with Dr. Parameti that knowledge is the most important. It's not only knowledge to actually perform work that's more productive, so you can last longer in the labor force, but also knowledge on financial literacy, on how do you save and survive on your own. As you can see that we rely on our own resources mainly, for our survival in the old age. Thank you.
Thank you. Fascinating. Thank you very much. There's a mic. Where's the mic? Is it there yet? There's a mic at the center of the room, so we'll throw the floor open to questions. Just state your name and your affiliation, if any, for the record. This program will eventually be uploaded on our channel on YouTube, so we like to have all this stuff on the record. Go ahead, please.
Robin Shell, recently retired from Habitat for Humanity. One issue which hasn't been mentioned too much is shortage of jobs, unemployment. And I'm thinking, I worked till I was 73, which is now, and retired. That deprives a younger person of getting a job in some countries. I wonder what your comments might be about that. And secondly, encouraging more people to be working, staying in work, and this is a dangerous comment, it might be interpreted as sexist, but encouraging women, more women to stay in employment, would it sometimes be better for some of them to be willing to be helping elderly at their home, their family, elderly family members, and saving the cost of governmental care for elderly people? That's a controversial comment. Thank you.
Who would like to take that? Eduardo, we haven't heard from you for a while. Go ahead.
The second question, I think you are right. Everything is interrelated. You cannot talk about reducing the already decreasing capacity to care for the elderly at home by incorporating women into the workforce if you at the same time are not dealing with the long-term care issues. So you have to have as she said, a very holistic approach. You cannot be piecemealing policies on increasing employment or retirement or savings and investment alone. You have to have a general strategy, a strategic framework of adaptation of economies and societies. So that point is very well taken. It is very interrelated. And the other thing is, women, for example, in Vietnam, they retired at 55 years old. And that was a right, that was an achievement. After many years of war, of sacrifice, that Vietnam came with that law. Men retired at 60, women at 55. And now, but that was done at a time when women and men lived 10 years, 15 years after retirement as an average. But now those lifespans have extended considerably. People now in Vietnam live 10 years longer than in 1990. So if you have to rethink also the ways people continue contributing to their societies. So I was in a meeting with the Vietnam Women's Union 5-6 years ago, and they were discussing whether to extend the retirement age. And half of the audience said, yes, why should I stop working if I am still, I want to contribute, I want to work, I have my friends, I realize myself working. And the other half were saying, no, this is my right, I want to stay at home, I want to get my salary without working. So those are social debates and social consensuses that have to be constructed, yes? And those are processes, but all that requires a holistic approach, a strategy. And that is what is in process of development. Implies household, implies individuals, individual behavior, implies households, implies communities, implies policy, implies private sector, implies all sectors of society.
First part of the question, job supply.
Yeah, I think in terms of the employment opportunity, I think for Thailand now, even not in a very good year, our unemployment rate is less than 1%, so it's still 0.8%, and there are 2-3 million, I think, the immigrant labor working in Thailand. So I think we really do have a shortage of the labor, and I think there should be enough room, I think, for elderly people who still continue to work, and then also for the young people or new people entering workforce, labor market to have job. I think it's probably how to arrange and organize the system. For example, like when we discussed the extending the retirement age of the civil servant group, we have discussed the same thing, how we provide opportunity for the younger generation to still continue to come up and then being promoted, while for the elderly group maybe have a special position or special function for them to continue to contribute their experience. So I think there are still room to arrange and organize the system that we can have the elderly still working. For the caretaker, I think of course especially in the rural area, there is a situation that there are people over 80 that now stay in bed and then didn't really have to go to the hospital, but stay in bed most of the time, and then they need people to take care. So we are now trying to encourage and organize the system of the health manager in the village, and then help volunteer who can come around to the house to help the elderly, so that they do not depend on the hospital or the service from the government or public health care system alone.
Next question, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, Fred Kerpeel. I'm involved in industrial correspondence. It's kind of a curiosity question. I don't know if any of you had any experience with Japan, but they seem to be the one furthest along with looking at robotics and helping with actually both jobs, and I think helping to care for the aged, and have resisted immigration as one of your 5, 6 things that you put up there. Just a comment somebody might have.
I can say something to that. Actually, The Economist magazine did a survey, I think 2 years ago, on Japanese, asking them, as you age, would you prefer to be taken care of by a robot or by a foreign caretaker, a caretaker who's not Japanese? And overwhelmingly, Japanese says robots. But fortunately, they have become rich before they have become old, so they can afford to, develop robots and purchase robots for their homes. So they said, we will prefer robots, and that's cultural as well. But in a country like Thailand, I don't think we have much of a choice in that. Either we buy these expensive robots from Japan, or we, welcome, trained nurses from the Philippines, or even, other countries to take care of us, which I think at the end of the day, why not, invite talent into Thailand, since we have already, invited, so many unskilled labor to Thailand. Maybe it's time to open up for some talent as well. That would be my...
Can I just jump in with a question here for you, Dr. Kirida? You mentioned the fact that Thai men, rural men, work well into old age. Mm-hmm. So they do that because they have to, right, to survive. They don't have much money. They don't earn much money. Right?
Exactly.
So it masks another problem altogether, right? Which is they don't have the cash.
Like Dr. Paramiti says, right? 20 million, elderlies, do not have, savings for the old age, so they need to work, but there's no retirement age in the farming sector, so they can continue working, in that sector, or do, odds and ends, as a free hired hands. Yes, so they're, that's why they have to still, keep working. Yeah. But for those who don't have to, the question is, can we incentivize them to work, such as urban women? Mm-hmm. I think that was the point.
Next question.
My name's Chris Bruton, member of the Foreign Correspondents Club, and since I'm 78, I suppose I have a right to be called one of the age group that you're talking about. I'd like to ask a question about Thai prejudices and policy, firstly in terms of age and also in terms of immigration. You know that there was no retirement age, I think, until it was the Prussian army that the Kaiser discovered that a lot of his soldiers were over 80 and decided they should get out of the uniforms, otherwise they were carrying on quite happily. And there is the saying, that you are as old as you feel, and also that it's retirement that kills you, not work. So in that context, do you think that Thailand's prejudiced against older people, because you do have already mentioned these relatively early retirement ages, which I think are now increasing dramatically in Europe, I think in Denmark particularly, that should people be encouraged to continue working as the farmers do until a very high age, and that there should be no retirement at all. You can defer pensions, for example, in some countries, and thereby gain a higher pension. On the immigration side, it does seem there's a very strong prejudice against immigration into Thailand, and it would be quite difficult, surely, to use that alternative as a solution, because we don't seem to treat our immigrants very well. I might mention, to combine the two, that it appears to be illegal for foreigners to work over the age of 70 at all, because the Labour Department doesn't allow the renewal of work permits over the age of 70. I don't fortunately include in that category because I was here before 1973, and those of us who were here then have lifetime work permits, so we can carry on forever. But wouldn't it be a good idea to encourage, as Kun Kirida has mentioned, the talent that is already retired in other countries to come to Thailand and give their expertise and help? But they wouldn't be allowed to if they were over 70. So just the attitudes of age and immigration in Thailand.
Just the attitudes of immigration. But I mean, you use the word prejudice. Is there prejudice in Thailand against one, old elderly people, the second, foreign labor?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I don't know. I can ask around, but I think Thai people is very relatively. I think so very respectful of the elderly, and then I think do not have prejudice in the term of their involvement or being around in the society. But the things, like I said, I think the situation is come from the different angle that we have a lot of relatively young labor force in the past growing every year. So from now on, I think the situation will keep adjusting, and then most of the people average age will be getting older and older anyway. So I think soon it will be the aging society, and then I think the work or I think people who engage in the workforce, I think will probably by the requirement or naturally will become, I think more we will see more aging people, I think involved in the workforce. And actually one observation is that even now the young people and the new generation, they do not want to come to work in the establishment or establishment type very much. So they like to be independent, start up, I think entrepreneur, working on the application, computer program that you mentioned by themselves. So I think we will lack a lot of the people who I think continue to be in the old type of the establishment system in the company, in the government sector. So naturally, I think the people, they will welcome, I think more and more people older age to continue to work. And I think the immigration, I think policy also, I think that we gradually adjust when the society start to realize what happened.
I agree with Dr. Varman that actually when young people actually become entrepreneurs on their own, right, there's no retirement age. They can work until they want, but one probably has to look at ways to keep them in the labor force, meaning, for example, access to finance or, access to, other kinds of knowledge, because otherwise they will not be able to last as an entrepreneur for very long, and they would have to retire themselves out and things like that. But I'm actually quite interested in what Chris has mentioned. I just realized we don't have prejudice against old people, but this rule that says Thai government would not give visas to foreigners over the age of 70, won't give work permit.
Work permits.
Work permits, yes. Not visas, sorry, work permits. So that's something new that I didn't know before.
That's not the case. I was just told that's not the case.
I got my first work permit at the age 70 and kept getting it each year until now, 73.
Fantastic. There you go. But on the other hand, Dr. Kirida, there is countries will have to adapt if they have prejudice against immigration, and many countries I mean, it's becoming more manifest now with globalization, the threat, migration and stuff. You see what's happening in Europe. They will have to forcibly, perforce, adapt to allowing immigrants in, right?
Definitely, especially in the medical sector, I would say, because there's a necessity there, right? As the country ages, you need more doctors and nurses, and now we already have a shortage of Thai doctors and nurses. So, 10, 20 years from now, I'm pretty sure that we'll probably have to open up, to foreign doctors and nurses, which I don't see, why shouldn't we? Because we're welcoming, people with talent to come and help, develop the country and develop human resource.
Eduardo, you'd agree to that? This is the health sector is the key thing?
Yeah, but I just wanted to mention that the aging of the rural population is happening everywhere. The average age of a farmer in Japan and in Korea is approaching 70 years old, the average age of a farmer. So that means that not only the financial services, the extension, but also the equipment, the farm equipment, the robotics in the case of Japan, they have all sorts of supports for the body to lift weights. And so we have to adapt. There is an article, very interesting, who is going to farm the land in China? Because China is also rapidly being depleted from farming population. The younger population are not farming. Yeah. So who is going to produce the land? They have to reformulate the agricultural sector.
Big crisis in agriculture, yeah. Next question, please.
Could I just intervene for a moment on that? Because I have 2 or 3 people who have been rejected for work permits recently on the basis of age. So there is
maybe it's elastic. Yeah, who knows? Next question.
I'm Dr. William White. I'm a psychologist. I think there's an underlying issue that really affects both the young and the old. You're hearing the words disruptive technology a lot. This is becoming kind of a buzzword. In, I believe it was 2013 at a robotics conference, it was generally agreed that over 50% of the jobs being done today could be done by robotics with that level of expertise. Just recently, there was a study done in terms of AI and disruptive technology. It was said that China would have over 80% of its workers disrupted by AI. Thailand would have 79% of its workers disrupted by AI. And this is probably not a time to go into that, but I think that information is incredibly important and something that needs to be put in this mix.
Okay, that was more of a statement. You have a question for the panelists?
Well,
it's just a comment.
If this is indeed part of the thinking that's going on in terms of unemployment, employment, aging, youth, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, okay. For the next question.
Yes, primarily for Dr. Kurata. Am I correct that around 60, Joe Arden is my name, I'm a member of the club. Around 65% of Thai women are in the labor force, and around 47 or 8% of the total workforce is women. Are those figures basically correct? Around 65% of Thai women in the workforce, and of the total workforce in Thailand, around 47 or 8% consisting of women. I think that's from the World Bank. I think, but I'd like to.
From the labor force survey, I think you're quite right that the division between men and women in labor force is roughly around that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me, tying into that, I think I'm also correct that at all levels of education in Thailand, primary, secondary, tertiary, through master's degree, only at the doctorate level not the case, that in an increasing number, as is common throughout the world, Thai women, primary, secondary, tertiary level, are increasingly numbers higher and higher percent compared to Thai men. Assuming that is the case, and I'm again fairly certain of those statistics, are there implications in that for the things you were talking about with regard to Thailand and issues here of the labor force itself and of seniority and old age?
How does that fit in? Yes.
That's very difficult.
You'll have more women in the education system, right through all the stages up to higher education.
For the, I think primarily to the tertiary, I think the number of men, women, I think almost half, so it's very fair. And then for the higher education, like in university, now we start to see women or female student a little bit more than male.
That's interesting.
Are there any long-range implications for Thailand with regard to the issues?
So
that the panel
women
is
will
talking
become the
about?
boss.
Women will- Okay, next question.
Good evening, panelists. My name is Imtiaz Mukbul from Travel Impact Newswire. I cover the travel and tourism industry, one of the services sector that you very positively mentioned as the future economic area. I have two questions with reference to the concept of looking at this whole project, of this whole issue holistically. One is I'd like to get an update, if possible, on the future of the right to die legislations in many parts of the world, euthanasia. What is the status of that in Thailand and many parts of Asia, and do you see controversies emerging over that? And the second related one is on the relationship between aging and the future of militarization and defense. Will it render things like conscription obsolete? Surely people would not want to spend young people 2 years of their lives wasted it in going for military, when maybe wars may not really be a very good thing to have when you have got smaller number of young people to go off and die for your country, which might not be a very good idea in future. So how will this actually going to be affected? Because we're also seeing in the military is increasing number of people retiring who will not fit into any of those economic categories. They will not be good for manufacturing, agriculture, services, nothing. So where will they land up in terms of being productive people in societies? So two questions. One is on the right to die legislation, and the other one is on future of militarization and aging. Thank you.
Eduardo, you want to give it a shot?
Why me? I'll refer more to the second question or point. I don't know how irrelevant the military forces will be in the future. I don't know. That depends on the configuration of societies, alliance, international relations. But one thing I have to tell you, many young people spend 1-2 years in the military force. I think that in many cases that's part of the general education process of people who will have 30, 40, 50 years of life in productive life. Let me explain. In the 20th century, when somebody came, was born, was educated for 15, 16, 18 years, in some cases went to the military 1, 2, 3 years, and then they had the workforce, they were part of the workforce for 30 years. They retired and they lived 5, 10 years, and that was it. Now in the 21st century, you are born, you are educated, you get into the workforce, you are re-educated, you go again into the workforce, and you are continuously being educated. So all of you, probably most of you, when you started your professional careers, you didn't know about computing, about softwares, about things like that. We are all in the process of renewing our knowledge at the speed that was not present in the 20th century. So it's the same. Those who spend 1-2 years in the military, perhaps that's part of their education. It's not determining their whole future, their whole life as it was in the 20th century. That is just a reflection on that point. About euthanasia, I pass to you.
Thank you very much.
It's
Next
called
time I pass
assisted,
something
it's called
to you.
assisted
I think
dying now.
for those two issues, I think as far as I know, has not been discussed or hasn't been a big issue here yet. So I think for me it may be come in 15, 20 years maybe, but right now this is not the main issue that's been discussed. I think for the next 5 to 10 years, probably we still focus on this main issue of how to have enough saving, the healthcare system reform and all those things. But depend on the society. But so far it's not being raised as the main issue here yet.
So Dr. Paramiti, you talked about savings just now. Earlier you said that less than 10% of the budget in Thailand is spent on welfare of the elderly, and you said it will double. When will it double? Could you be specific about that?
Well, the double is probably take maybe 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
But during this time, from now on, the expenditure side on the expense on the elderly will increase faster than increase in the public revenue. So that's the issue that cannot wait.
I see. Okay. You have another question? Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Thelma Kay. I was the former Director of Social Development in UNESCAP and also former Senior Advisor to the Government of Singapore on aging issues. I'm interested in the policy that Thailand is pursuing because I have been to the Thai villages, and I think you have very good, at least community-based care. Perhaps very good could be can be toned down, but it's still very, I think, very admirable. So perhaps you can share with us how you're going to strengthen your policies on community-based care, which actually countries like Japan, Singapore, we're going towards that direction. Secondly, you talked about China's 97.3, the proportion, with very small proportion in going to nursing homes, sorry. So I just wonder, what is Thai policy now on aging in place? How are you going to help your people to age in place? Like, for example, having universal design, inclusive design to make transport easier. So what are the policies towards these two directions? Thank you.
Who would like to feel that? Community care first.
No, I think Thailand is not as explicit as China in terms of their approach to the long-term care policies. China has the Beijing established that it would be a proportion of 97.3. 90% of the population would be the target that they age in place, that means at home. 7% in home and community care, and only 3% in residential locations, yes, institutional care. Now, Beijing said that, then Shanghai came up with a similar policy, but they changed to 91.63, no? So, but the key thing is that Thailand is also putting, to my understanding, and please add to this, is putting a lot of emphasis in the home and community care. But it is easy to say we are focusing on the home and community care. That means that you have to establish the system of training of the health volunteers. You have to establish the systems of monitoring the health, setting standards for care for aging population. You have to develop a whole infrastructure, a whole capacity has to be built at different levels so that this can be implemented. That is what I mentioned when the gentleman there made the question, that you have to have complementarity between policies. If you don't do that, if you don't develop those systems of long-term care, you will not be freeing workforce or people in working age to join the workforce, women in particular. If you want to do that, you need to develop the long-term care systems. Which comes first? I think those are parallel processes that have to be developed within a comprehensive strategy. But I know that Thailand is doing that very, very actively now.
Yes, if I may add an example to that, since we have decentralized many of the central government functions to what we call local administrations, in many of the communities, the local administrations themselves, the Tambon administration, has now set, like child care centers and elderly care centers where they have also trained some personnel so that these, will then take care of the elderly in their communities, and those elderlies who are what we call bed-bound, they cannot move from their homes. Like what Paramiti says, either there will be these staffs from the community elderly centers visiting them, on a daily or every other day basis, and sometimes there will be hospitals, in that district. The district hospitals will also participate in this program where they go to visit homes with bed-bound patients as well. So it's starting, but we have some very good examples in some tambons as well. But it's not, a nationwide phenomenon yet at the moment.
Right. I think we have 80,000 registered as the elderly care volunteer, and at the community level, it's actually people in the community and family who have to take care of the elderly anyway. But the governments provide training, as you mentioned, and then sometimes a bit of the compensation. But this help to establish the community system to take care of the elderly.
Yes, and it's starting.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. We have another question. Go ahead, please.
Hello, I'm Catherine. I would like to know more about the fertility rate. That how could you explain that the fertility rate is so low in Thailand? And I mean that it's more really low for the urban women with higher education. So it's not a problem about money, that they cannot pay nanny. And what is your plan about this to encourage fertility rate?
Incentives to raise the fertility rate. You mentioned that in one of your slides, right?
Yeah. So what's the reason for the low fertility rate?
Yeah. Given the fact that that women working in Bangkok are presumably qualified and also are earning a decent income, how come their fertility rate is dropping?
Again, here I think I would have to allude to the fact that if you want to have more babies, then you have to sacrifice your career basically at the moment, right? Because there isn't so much childcare facilities.
So childcare is an issue.
Exactly, at the moment, and there aren't any government transfers to help pay for the cost of for example, if you have to have a nanny to take care of your children, then you probably will need to.
Dr. Paramiti, is the government going to start a scheme like this? Because many other countries have it. I mean, child assistance, right, to mothers.
Yeah, but I think so. Like Kun Krida said, there isn't any well approved with the evidence on the policy that we can effectively encourage the increase in the fertility. I think one problem I think that you rightly mentioned is that it is not about not having enough money to have a child or take care of the children, but I think it's changing environment of the society and public economy also. I think in the past when we have high fertility rate, I think it caused the agricultural economy. We like to have a lot of the children to work on farm or the support you in the future when you are getting old. But right now the situation I think changed. I think people have choosing not to have children, and then they can live alone, take care of themselves, have saving, and then public health system to take care. So they now be able to be single and then live alone. So that's the difficult to encounter or persuade them to have children.
Single and alone, that sounds rather grim.
Yeah, you're talking to two single people here, so it's very difficult for us to.
Has the internet got something to do with it, I wonder?
Internet.
Facebook.
Facebook. No, I think if I were to answer this from an economics point of view, one would say that the cost of raising a child of quality today in urban areas is quite expensive. Education in Bangkok is very expensive. Quality education, I must say, right? While the benefits of having a lot of children is not there. So if you just do a cost and benefit analysis, you probably want to have only one or two children at most. Unlike in the agrarian times where cost is low, benefits are high, so that justifies the high fertility rate back then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are general social behaviors that are difficult to explain. So the average age of a marriage, for example, is increasing now in many countries. Is over 30 years old to be married. But in China, now they scrap the one-child policy. But all forecasts are that will not make much difference in the total fertility rate, because it's a social behavior mentality, the economic rationale behind the number of children. No?
You have a follow-up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I find it's a kind of contradiction that you want to help for the fertility rate, and on the same way you want to ask the woman to work older. So me as a woman, if I have to think that I have to work until 65, 70, why I will do a children now if I cannot take care, I cannot be home because I have to work more and more, because you need more worker. So you think about the worker for the economical status in Thailand, but I find that the policy to make that you need more children. You need to think that because the population is just going down, so you need to think more longer term to make that the woman or the couple want to have more children.
It's a question of confidence, I suppose, in the future.
I think that there are some other way also. I think that which we try. I think to try to reduce the cost that you mentioned. Like we allow more maternal leave. I think after the birth, and then now. Husband can also, I think, take a leave also to take care of after the childbirth. We didn't allow that before, and also in some workplace they start to have child care, which you can bring your children to the office, something like that. So maybe combination of the policy can I think also produce a win-win situation, I hope.
I just want to add, I think that the issue here is the duration of a woman's work life. I think that's more of a concern. As you can see that in the urban areas, women sort of decline in their employment after 50. So when their kids are already grown up, they probably have established, in their careers already, then they decide to leave. And I don't know what the reason is actually. And that's one of the things that we would like to explore more and see how could we incentivize these women, even though after they're 50, to still, be in the labor force and work even after their kids have grown up and, they have a successful career. Maybe they want to, open up their little shop or want to become an entrepreneur. Maybe that's something that we would need to explore and, provide more knowledge or assistance to them. For example, financial access is actually quite important. If a woman is bored of her career, which she's been doing for 25 years, and she would like to open up a shop, an SME in the service sector, for example, it's not easy to do that in Thailand at the moment, right? Because you actually need physical collateral to actually go and get a loan from the government. Just last year, the government has passed one very good act, I must say, which is called the Secure Transactions Act, which means that you don't actually need to have physical collateral anymore if you want to borrow from a commercial bank. You can actually either use the equipments in your shop. Let's say you want to open a coffee shop, then you can actually use your coffee machines and and all other equipments, and also your future stream of income. But that would require many more steps before the law can be implemented. But it's a good step because first you have to have a registry where SMEs, especially in the service sector, which have not much collateral, can come and register with a center, a Ministry of at the Ministry of Commerce, because we need a reliable registry. And then commercial banks can check, from that registry that yes, this shop actually has these equipments. He or she will really have these future streams of incomes. Then they can provide a loan based on that. So things like that will slowly happen, but that's some of the things will probably help to keep women in their jobs.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Because Dr. Kirita also has to go in 5 minutes. Quick one, very, very brief.
Very brief. My name's Mick Elmore. I've been journalist based here for a long time. Do any of the countries in Asia actually have what they consider the population they want for their country? Do they think about that? Like, does Thailand think that, we should have 50 million people, not the 68 million we have now, or Singapore think we should have 3 million? Is that something that actually countries think about, governments think about?
Strategizing.
Think about with resources more than like the economy. Whenever you talk about population, it always turns into a question about economy. And population has a lot about resources as well. Is that something that's discussed, like Philippines thinking,
population policy strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have like a population strategy on how many people we want? Why did we put in that birth control policy? Because we want 65 million.
I think population policy is during the second and third plan is a big issue on family planning because the population growth is too high. But then after the family planning is so successful, we now realize too late that that we do not have optimum size of the labor and population anymore. So now what we have to deal with is to have to deal with the situation and then continue to maintain economic growth and then arrange for the old age to live happily and gracefully. Yeah.
So it does figure in your policy discussions. It does. Yeah, go ahead, Edmund.
During the 90s, there was a very active population policy to reduce fertility rates during the 70s and 80s. And in the 90s, you can see the effect that in every country in Asia reduced their total fertility rates dramatically. Myanmar, who would say Myanmar now has total fertility rate lower than France? Yes? 20 years ago, that was unthinkable. Now, those were very active political population policies. Now, the policies on population are reactive. They are reacting towards the consequences of that dramatic reduction in fertility rates. So that is aging populations. And then if populations, countries are trying to balance their population to increase the fertility rates, but the humanity has been more successful in reducing fertility rates than in increasing fertility rates. If you see Germany, Italy, Japan gives a subsidy of $35,000 the equivalent per child, up to 3 children until they are 5 years old for every woman, no? But all that subsidy, for example, has not really succeeded in increasing the fertility rates. And there is a very demonstrable positive correlation between level of education, women's level of education, and fertility rates. No, there is the higher the level of education, the lower the fertility rate. So, in short, there was very active population policy, and now it is very reactive population policy. I don't know if that.
Okay, I think on that note we'll wind up the evening, and Dr. Kirita has to leave, but maybe the other panelists are around, so you can chat to them one-on-one. Thank you very much. It's fascinating. We could go on and on, but I'm sure that we all have lives to get back to as well. Thank you again. Thank you very much for coming to the FCCD.